Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into a listener-submitted piece on American healthcare, specifically this idea of leaning into patient care. We're going beyond the buzzword to uncover who really holds the reins in this system.
We're dissecting a thought-provoking analysis from Blue Spoon Consulting, which argues the answer might surprise you.
Right off the bat, the article throws us some curveballs. It talks about Verily, Google's health spinoff, and OpenAI both launching these big, ambitious healthcare initiatives, powered by AI. Now, on the surface, that sounds promising, right? Cutting-edge tech swooping in to revolutionize healthcare.
You'd think so. But the author isn't convinced. He argues that this whole tech-first approach might be missing a critical piece of the puzzle, and that's where pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, enter the scene.
PBMs. Okay, for anyone who's not up on their healthcare acronyms, what exactly are we talking about here?
In the simplest terms, PBMs are the intermediaries between drug companies and your insurance plan. They negotiate prices, decide what drugs are covered, and essentially control what ends up in your medicine cabinet and at what cost.
And the article claims they wield a staggering amount of power in the process. We're talking about 90% of prescription dispensing volume, covering a mind-blowing 270 million people.
It's a level of influence that often goes unnoticed. The author compares these new AI initiatives to inventing a state-of-the-art car.
When the entire road system is designed for horses.
Precisely. He's saying that these tech companies, while well-intentioned, might be focusing on optimizing a system that's fundamentally flawed. Because the way our healthcare system is structured, it's the PBMs who are holding the reins, not your doctor.
And that's where things start to get really interesting, and maybe a little unsettling. We'll be back in a moment to uncover how something as antiquated as the fax machine plays into this power dynamic. Okay, so we've established that PBMs hold a lot of cards when it comes to medication access. But where do fax machines come into all this? It sounds like something out of a time capsule, not a healthcare system.
Right. You would think in the digital age we'd have moved beyond such archaic technology, especially in something as critical as healthcare. But that's exactly the point the article makes. It highlights how deeply entrenched these systems are.
So walk me through this. How are fax machines propping up this system?
Well, the article details how some PBMs use what they call passive contracts. Basically, they mass fax these dense contracts over to pharmacies, outlining their terms and conditions. But here's the kicker. These pharmacies are often automatically enrolled in these contracts, even if they don't physically sign anything, just by virtue of receiving the fax.
But seriously, that sounds, well, not exactly ethical.
It's definitely a tactic that raises eyebrows, and it illustrates the power imbalance at play. Pharmacies are often left with little choice but to accept these terms as PBMs essentially dictate which medications are covered and how much they'll be reimbursed for them. And who bears the brunt of this opaque system? The patients.
So on one hand, you have these powerful PBMs using outdated technology to maintain their grip, and on the other, you have companies like Verily and OpenAI with their fancy AI algorithms trying to innovate.
Right.
It feels like they're playing two entirely different games.
That's a great analogy. The author suggests that these tech companies, while well-intentioned, might simply be trying to build a faster horse and buggy, so to speak. Instead of addressing the fundamental flaws in the system's structure, they're optimizing within a framework that ultimately benefits the PBMs more than the patients.
It's discouraging to see how deeply entrenched these power dynamics are, but the article doesn't leave us completely disheartened, right? There's got to be some hope for real change.
There is. And it's not just wishful thinking. The author lays out a bold vision for what he calls a big strategic rotation. He argues for a complete overhaul of how we approach healthcare in America.
That sounds intense. What would that even look like in practice? A big strategic rotation. It's a catchy phrase, but what does it actually mean for everyday people, trying to navigate the healthcare system?
It's about shifting the entire focus from simply treating illness to actually producing health. The author argues that the current system is very reactive, focusing on addressing problems after they arise, which is expensive and often ineffective.
So instead of just putting out fires, we need to prevent them from starting in the first place.
Exactly. Think about it like this. Instead of just treating diabetes after it develops, imagine a system that incentivizes doctors to help people make lifestyle changes and catch risk factors early on to prevent it altogether. It's about promoting wellness, not just managing sickness.
That makes a lot of sense. But how does that translate to concrete actions, especially with these entrenched power dynamics we've been discussing?
The author gets into the weeds a bit here, but one key aspect is a proposed overhaul of the pharmacy reimbursement model. Instead of just dispensing medications, imagine pharmacists playing a more central role in patient care.
So they'd be more like accessible healthcare providers, offering preventative services, managing chronic conditions, things like that.
Precisely. It's about utilizing their expertise beyond just filling prescriptions. It's a radical shift. But the idea is to create a system where keeping people healthy is valued as much as, if not more than, treating them when they're sick.
That's a pretty big change. Is there any indication that something like that is even remotely possible?
Well, the author points out something interesting. This whole leaning into patient care phrase that everyone seems to be using, even if they're going about it in different ways, suggests a hunger for change across the board.
So even with all the roadblocks and power struggles, there's a glimmer of hope in the collective desire for something better.
Absolutely. The author seems to believe that if we can harness that energy, that shared frustration with the status quo,
Yeah.
it could fuel real systemic change.
It's inspiring to think that even within this complex, often frustrating system, there's potential for a positive evolution.
Absolutely. This Blue Spoon piece is as much a call to action as it is an analysis. It's a challenge to look beyond quick fixes and demand a healthcare system that truly prioritizes patients and promotes health, not just profits.
This deep dive has certainly given us a lot to think about. We went from AI-powered healthcare to the surprising influence of fax machines to a call for a fundamental system overhaul.
It really highlights the importance of looking beyond the surface and questioning who benefits from the way things are, even when it comes to something as crucial as healthcare.
And for our listener, if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, we highly recommend checking out the full Blue Spoon Consultant piece. It's a thought-provoking read that might just change the way you view the entire healthcare landscape. Until next time, keep asking those big questions.